Thank you for joining us this evening for the February 9th, 2023 Monte Sereno Better Streets Commission meeting. Before the meeting is called to order, I would like to point out a few house rules to assist the commissioners, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. Commissioners, your microphone is live, so please keep your microphones on mute until you wish to speak. For tonight's meeting, we are using Zoom to host the Better Streets Commission meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. Please use chat only to report technical issues such as being unable to hear a commissioner speaking. Please use raised hand to be recognized by the chair and enabled to speak to the commissioners. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participants calling in from a telephone will only be able to listen and cannot provide feedback or public comment. And lastly, because we are not all in the same room, all votes in this meeting will be taken by roll call.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And would you like to take a roll, Cloyce?
Yes. Let's see. Commissioner Bob?
Yep, I'm here.
Commissioner Liz?
Present.
Commissioner Natalia?
Here.
Commissioner Shalini?
Here.
And Chair Barry?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Next, orders of the day. Does anybody have any reason to change the agenda or have any comments on anything on the consent calendar? All right, with that, we'll go on to oral communications. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak, Cloyce? Cloyce?
Oh, sorry, I was talking and I was on mute. Sorry about that.
Oh,
No other attendees. Sorry about that.
Okay. And I think the next thing was written communication. Is there any written communication that we should be aware of?
What we received was actually posted onto the agenda and also emailed to everybody earlier today.
Okay, that's the regarding the
Yes,
bicycle and pedestrian plan.
Yeah, additional information for your discussion.
All right. In that case, would somebody like to make a motion that we adopt the consent calendar?
I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
Okay, could I have a second on that, please?
I second it.
Right, Cloyce, go ahead and take a roll on that, please.
Yes, Commissioner Bob?
Yep.
Commissioner Liz?
Yes.
Commissioner Natalia?
Yes.
Commissioner Shalini?
Yes.
And Chair Barry?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, next we have the introduction of two new commissioners. Would you guys mind doing a short introduction of yourself? And if you have any objectives while you're on the commission, you can go ahead and tell us about that. Would you like to go first, Natalia?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia. I do have an accent. I originally was born in Russia and 14 years ago moved to California. Now I've been living in Bay Area for the last 13 years. I used to work as a photojournalist for the local newspaper, Palo Alto Weekly, Mountain View Voice, and the Almanac for about 5 years as a photojournalist. Then I started my own business and I photographed different corporations, including Netflix. So for now, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have twin daughters, and I am part of the commission. I'm a commissioner.
No.
Yeah. So this is a quick introduction. Oh, and I've been living in Monte Sereno for 3 years and in Los Gatos area for 9 years. So I'm very familiar with the area, and I would like to contribute to the development of the area as much as I can.
Well, thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
Liz, would you like to introduce yourself? There may be people that don't know you here.
Sure, I'm Liz Lawler. I actually am returning to the Better Streets Commission. I recently served on City Council for 4 years. I then ran for State Assembly and made it through the primary, so I was unable to run again for council. I am back where I started on Better Streets Commission because it's very important to me that our kids have safe routes to school, and I want to make sure that our community is safe.
Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
The next thing on our business is to elect a chair and a vice chair for 2023. I'd like, if anybody wants to speak up, would like that position, they may, although I'd like to go ahead and nominate Commissioner Lawler just because of her extensive experience with our city. I think she could really make a difference in that role.
Thank you.
Do we have any other nominations for chair?
No, I
Okay.
think it's great. I'll second having
Okay.
Liz as a chair.
Okay, vice chair, would anybody, if somebody has a long-term interest in possibly being the chair, it's a good position to take because you'll have to help out occasionally. So if there's anybody that's interested in that, they can feel free to nominate themselves. Nobody wants to speak up?
Can I nominate Barry for doing it?
Sure. I'll, if nobody else wants to do it, I will accept that.
Wonderful.
I'll second that.
Okay. I'm not sure the exact procedure, but can we take a vote on both of those at the same time? Goisi, do you happen to know?
Why don't we go ahead and do the vote for the first nomination for Lawler as chair, and then we'll do a second vote for vice, okay? Give me
Okay.
1 second.
Okay, great.
Sorry, moving through screens here. All right. All right, Commissioner Bob,
Yep.
Commissioner Liz,
Yes.
Commissioner Natalia,
Yes.
Commissioner Shalini,
Yes.
and Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
Great. Motion passes for nomination for Liz Lawler as chair. And then I'll take a second roll call for vice chair. Commissioner Bob,
Yes.
Commissioner Liz,
Yes.
Commissioner Natalia,
Yes.
and Commissioner Shalini,
Yes.
and then Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
Motion passes. Barry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. At this point, I believe I should turn things over to our new chair, Lawler.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Let's see, moving on to unfinished business. Bicycle and pedestrian master plan update. Dawn, do you have an update for us?
I do. Actually, it's a moving target update to the extent that at the last meeting, the commission requested that modifications be made to the draft master bicycle pedestrian master plan. And the parameters of that modification were sent to KTUA, who responded with a proposal that proposal was received by the city, approved by the city manager. They were authorized to proceed. The scope of work of that was provided to them is one of the attachments to this item in your packet. The K2A jumped right in, and in fact, Monday this week delivered the modified draft master plan. And so it was provided by city clerk to you all as a preview, with an understanding that the really, as I discussed, or Chairman Barry determined that there really wasn't enough time for commission to do any serious reading. So it's not anticipated that this evening there would be a discussion of the draft itself. But certainly any discussion of the guidance to KTUA would be appropriate. I've listed a couple of items that, or one item, I guess, the El Rancho connection to University Avenue that came up previously and perhaps could be discussed this evening. But I think the basic issue before the commission tonight is when you would like to have an in-depth drill down conversation about the revised master plan, whether at a regular meeting or to have a special meeting. That would be my comments.
All right, thank you. Are there any commissioners with any questions?
As Don, are you going to talk a little bit more about El Rancho during this section?
I can speak briefly to the issue, yes. And I can do that now if that's the
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you.
okay. The draft master plan, well, I guess I should back up and say the commission had been at work on the master plan since January last year and had undertaken a serious process to develop that with the consultant KTUA out of San Diego. That included community input at a city picnic. It included research and other work by KTUA and the development of the draft plan in October, I believe it was, of this year. 2022. The plan shows a connection of El Rancho Drive to University Avenue. And that particular feature was brought up previously and some question raised as to its what that implied or meant or was. That led me to do a physical inspection or observation of the area, and as perhaps many of you know, there is in fact a gate in a fence at the end of El Rancho. And that gate leads on to what appears to be private property. I looked at the development records that were available to the city for the home that's to the left at the end as you go down El Rancho, the home that's to the left, and the property to the right, which is a condominium, actually, I think in the town of Los Gatos. But nowhere in those maps was there any indication that this was a dedicated easement. I wouldn't want to represent to you that is the answer and the definitive answer, but that was the information that was available to me. So I guess the question is what the commission, how you wish to interpret that. Is this a proposal in the plan for a future connection that should be explored and pursued as would be indicated in the master plan.
All right, thank you for that. Does anybody have, Commissioner Barry, do you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I don't think we're in a position to, do eminent domain or somehow take, force something there. But I would like to keep it on our master plan long-term in case there's ever any development in that area. Maybe they redevelop those condos or there's some major change 20 years down the road. We recognize that's there and ask the developer at that time to make some concession for the public benefit. That's my feeling on the subject.
I'd have to say I agree. Any other comments? Gloissy, for procedural purposes, should I open it up to public comment even though there's no one here?
Yes, you
Okay.
can. And yes, there's there's a confirmation. There's nobody else attending.
All right, so is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move back to discussion. It sounds like if everyone's in agreement that we will keep this on the long-term plan and just kind of earmark it for future based on whatever kind of development happens there. All right, you've got your direction. Thank you. Let's see, moving on, item number 2, Highway 9 Gap Project Update.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Berry.
yeah, I don't think we've finished this item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
We need to decide what to do about the plan that was just submitted by KTUA and how to turn that into our bicycle and pedestrian master plan.
Right. I'm so sorry. Now, in reading the information, it sounds like they were supposed to be at this. They were planning on being at this meeting tonight.
Well, Don and I had a discussion, I believe it was yesterday, and he mentioned that they were willing to do that.
Okay.
But I didn't feel that was appropriate until we had a chance to digest the work they did and could ask the appropriate questions. I just thought it was premature on such short notice, especially with 2 new commissioners that didn't really have any familiarity with this project. And so I'm hopeful, or I believe we should take some time and digest it, discuss it, and then have a meeting with KTUA. That's the decision, or the approach Don and I decided on when this came in earlier this week.
All right. So I have a question then. Do you feel that having them come to the next meeting would give us ample time? Would you like to see it happen sooner? I mean, given where we are in this plan.
Well, my comment, I don't think there's any rush. I mean, we want to keep moving forward all the time. I think we probably want to discuss it amongst ourselves before we talk to them again.
Okay.
So if we want to talk to them at the next meeting, then maybe we need to have a special meeting. But I don't. I personally would prefer not to talk to them and do another iteration if that's what's going to happen until we've kind of reached agreement amongst ourselves about exactly how we want to proceed. That's my gut feeling.
Okay, that makes sense. Any other commissioners have comments? All right, then. So then the direction would be, do you feel, is it worthwhile for us to have a special meeting? What are the costs incurred to the city for doing that? If this is not a big rush item, then perhaps we can just discuss it, maybe have a special meeting on April 13th. We meet early. There's various ways we can do this. I want to make sure that we're not impacting the city too much in terms of special meetings and costs.
As far as I'm concerned, it could be part of the regular meeting, although I don't know if Don might comment on any constraints or the relationship with the consultant. If he might have some additional insight into how we should handle it.
Sure.
Well, I did speak with KTUA, and they were available but did not participate at my direction this evening. They will be available in the future. So I think the idea of being ready for that conversation, because I mean, there are hard costs associated with involving the consultants. As far as having an interim special meeting, let's say a month from now, after the commissioners have had a chance to read through the revised draft, if you're prepared to talk amongst yourselves, personally, I think that would be constructive and certainly helpful to staff. Then if there was anything that needed to be done between that meeting and your regular meeting in April, we'd have time to have that accomplished. I guess the question then is a month enough time for commissioners to get through the revised plan and be ready to talk amongst yourselves in March, then decide if there's anything more to be done, and then schedule the final conversation with the consultant in April. And you could, that evening, you could adopt a motion to approve and forward the plan to the council, or again, you could schedule a subsequent meeting for that purpose.
All right, thank you. Well, I think in the interest of being efficient, would it be helpful to you if we as commissioners went through this plan individually and then submitted questions that we can then discuss at the next meeting and that we were all aware of on the agenda, so we know what we're talking about? And maybe we do have that special meeting in March that we can go over those questions. And so that by April, we can have them come, and then we will hopefully be ready to present it to council after that. Does that sound like a plan? I
mean, from my standpoint, that sounds great. But
Okay.
it's the commission's
Yes,
determination on how you want to do that.
yes. Commissioner Berry?
My gut feeling after taking a brief look at it is there'll need to be at least a minor revision before we're happy with it. So we should just think about that aspect of the schedule.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioner Natalia?
I would like to get more familiar with this project because I don't know what it's about, so I would like to get more information. And I'm okay I can attend the special meeting if needed in March as well as in April.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Commissioner Shalini, do you have any questions?
No, I agree with you. We just need to read a little more and probably we can submit our questions. That would be more efficient way, correct?
Okay, great, wonderful. And Commissioner Bob, any other comments or questions?
No, I think it's all been pretty well hashed out. And I'll second what Barry said, that we probably should give it a thorough read and communicate to the consultants what we were expecting, if it doesn't meet what we've actually discussed a few times now.
All right,
So.
great. Well, thank you. It sounds like we have, Dawn, you have direction and we all have our jobs set ahead of us, so.
I have another comment, please. I think it would probably be useful, particularly for the new commissioners, if we could somehow give them the original version and the proposed changes that we came up with. That Doreen Nelson and I formed a subcommittee to make recommendations to how to change the first version of this. And so that background information may be useful for people just getting up to speed. So I don't know the appropriate way to distribute that information in a way that doesn't violate the Brown Act. But if you can think about how to get that out, Don and Glacy, that
Are
would be
these
great.
some of the items that have been posted in previous meetings? something that could always
Yes,
be-
everything has been part of a previous meeting.
Yeah, so then if it's part of that, I would recommend then folks looking back at the previous agendas.
Is it appropriate for me, as long as it's public information, to gather it
It's-
up and
it's
email
public.
it to everybody?
Yes,
Okay,
because it's public.
Okay, all right, I'll take the item within the next week to send an email out with that information. So that you have both copies, both the original, the proposed changes Doreen and I gave them, and then the current copy, which you already have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready for item 2? Highway 9 Gap Project Update. Don?
Yes. This project, which has been under design by a consultant, BKF, for many months, continues to face difficulty getting approval from the Caltrans review staff. Caltrans has a number of specialty reviewers that have looked at and continue to review the BKF proposal for constructing section of asphalt sidewalk that would fill the gap between the two existing sidewalk pieces on the north side of Highway 9. That process is slow and somewhat torturous. One of the problems is that the Caltrans reviewers are prone to bringing in new standards and new requirements that have come to exist since the original construction of that walkway. So BKF is needing to handle it with kid gloves, if you will, to try to be as diplomatic as possible and as responsive technically as possible. BKF resubmitted a revised version of the design to Caltrans about 2.5 weeks ago. So it is currently in Caltrans for review. The changes from the previous version addressed concerns such as the width of shoulders between the curb on the walkway and the edge of the traveled lane, the shoulder stripe, if you will, on Highway 9, and the width of the sidewalk itself. So again, BKF, I think, is doing appropriate professional work and diplomacy with Caltrans. At this point, I can only say that it remains a work in progress.
All right, well, thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions?
Oops. I guess my mic is on. I have a question. So are they mainly asking for increased sidewalk width and increased shoulder over what is existing both immediately before and immediately after?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly the challenge. And because, as you all know, there is an embankment on one side. So if you make it wider in toward the private property side, that means the retaining walls have to grow. In addition, there are significant utility poles in that area. So those features have to be contended with. It's not straightforward. And of course, the more you go into that bank and the taller the retaining walls need to be, the more expensive the project becomes. And the expense of this project is a significant issue with respect to actual implementation. That the project at this point is not funded, as was previously reported. The OBAG grant to VTA, I think it is, was not, that included funding for this project and Days Avenue bicycle pedestrian improvements. Neither of those grant requests were funded and approved by the last OBAG. So at this point, we're on the hunt again for money to pay for this.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Natalia, Commissioner Natalia.
Right. I was wondering what part of the Highway 9 are we talking about? What is the closest like street intersection?
I guess the easiest way is to describe it, it's either side of Grandview. There's improvement or the addition of the sidewalk, both east and west of Grandview. And that the new sidewalk would connect to the end of the sidewalk as it exists. I mean, there is an asphalt sidewalk. I know you're familiar with that, Natalia. You probably walk it more than
Yes, I do walk there all the time. Yeah, I'm familiar.
So basically filling in the gap between where it ends to the west of Grandview and to the east.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? So Dawn, is the OBAG cycle, is it every 2 years? What's the grant cycle? I thought I saw that in the report somewhere.
Chairman or ex-chairman Chafin may know that better than I do. I'm not sure. I think it's at least every couple of years, but.
Okay,
It's definitely no more frequent than that.
right, okay. And then they went to San Jose, I'm assuming because Monte Sereno is low on the priority list, is my guess.
Well, this is something I mentioned last time, which was a topic of conversation at the VTA BPAC, is that there was so much extra weight for communities of need, low-income communities, that they actually sucked in all the projects.
Yeah.
And of course, San Jose has a huge staff to do these applications. And
Right.
so obviously they have a lot higher quality application than we do.
Sure.
Well, I will say on behalf of the prior city staff, the package that went into that OBAG grant was very impressive, very well done. Jessica gets a lot of credit for what she did on that package.
Yeah, we recommended to VTA staff who does grade those that they give some extra weight to small communities in order to help us have a better chance of winning some of these, because none of the small towns got a single grant.
Right, and that's problematic. All right, well, thank you for that. Let's see, I guess I can open up to public comment. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? If so, raise your hand.
There are no hands raised.
Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you for that report, Don, and we'll move on.
And Commissioner, if I'm Chairman, I'm sorry, might I just add?
Yes.
That the city has, within the last week, engaged the services of additional staff support from CSG consultants.
Okay.
They have provided staff support in the past. And one of the priority assignments that has gone to the person, and for that matter, the whole CSG team, is to go on the search for funding sources and to be sure that we're doing all the right things related to the funding sources that we have. I mean, there's, I'm going to say 4 or 5 funding sources: gas tax, the SMART SB1 money, and so on. And each of these funding programs, be they regular or grant-based, have their own ginormous set of rules. So we want to be sure we're doing that right, and that we move on any grant applications that may come our way. And then, as was just discussed, it's a matter of having the resources to put together a credible grant application package. So I would just reporting to you that the city's taken action to enhance its ability to do all of those things.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Don. I appreciate that. Commissioner Barry?
Don, you and I discussed the funding sources chapter or section in the back of the bicycle and pedestrian plan. I'm wondering if this new consultant should actually be the author of that section, because as you know, I didn't really like the looks of the list that we got from KTUA.
You caught me a bit, Commissioner Chafin. I would have to think about that. I mean, and go back and reread that section to see how that relates to the kind of work that CSG is going to be able to do for us. Can I beg it off at the moment?
Sure.
Look into that, because I'm not entirely sure, because I haven't read that section of the master plan recently.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it looks like it lists at least 16 funding sources, but not all of them are available to us. It's a good question now. Okay.
It might be a revised version that having our team review that list and make it, what would you say, fine tune it for the purposes of Monte Sereno would be maybe a combination.
Yes, that sounds good. I like that idea. Any other comments? All right, then. Are we ready to move on? Thank you, Don, for that report. Are we ready to move on to item number 3, pedestrian signal across Highway 9 at Greenwood? Update, please.
Yes, the conversations about the master plan involved comments from various commissioners on various issues. One that was mentioned and I included is this Greenwood pedestrian signal, because I wanted to be sure I understood the commission's thinking and goals with regard to this signal. I had a conversation with Commissioner Chafin about it, and he made a great deal of clarity for me on that issue, but this is on there just to be sure. So I would defer actually to Commissioner Chafin to elaborate some on where this came from, might I so request.
So, and I'm hoping Bob has a better recollection than me, but this, there has been a couple complaints about it. People are scared to use it, but when we did a walkthrough, Bob and I with KTUA, they made several comments on how it was insufficient. It was the wrong type to use, and I think there were some things not working on it. I didn't take any notes because I thought the detail would be in the report that we got from KTUA, which I haven't seen those details yet. I'm not sure we're going to. Do you happen to remember any more detail than that, Bob? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I absolutely remember what you're talking about, and you're correct. So I think the 3 issues, one was there were several broken or not working lights on the ground itself. One of the 2 push buttons did not have either the ability to communicate verbally or audibly for disabled or ADA issue. And then third, they considered the structure and the entire design of it insufficient due to the speed the cars would be traversing in that section of Highway 9. And those are the main points that they had called out to us when we walked through a while back with them. So.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Any other questions? I have one question. So because it's on Highway 9, then are we dealing with Caltrans on this one as well?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, that answers my question. No need to say anything else. All right. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Being none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Any other comments before we move on?
I guess I would only ask if any of the commissioners know an approximate year when that signal was constructed.
I do not know.
I'll take an action to research that, unless Bob was going to speak up or somebody else actually knows.
I would only venture a guess, given that I'd moved here right at the same time as they were doing construction on it, to be around 2016. But go ahead and research it to better clarify my knowledge.
There
Commissioner,
should be something in the city engineer files here. I will go back into those files, and if Commissioner Chapin can assist me in that research, that'd be great.
right. Natalia, did you want to ask a question?
Mostly a comment about that signal crossing. I drive on that road at least 2 times a day, and I never seen anyone crossing over there because it's so inconvenient. There is, if you cross it in Greenwood, it's mostly residential and it goes up the hill, so you couldn't even walk or hike there. Or if you cross the other way and want to walk, for example, to downtown Los Gatos, there is no road to do that. Yes, there is a crossing, but there is no road to take it down. If we go to number 2 in our discussion, the previous part, if you could scroll up a little bit, that would be helpful. Yes, so for the Highway 9 gap, that's the road that needs to be built for pedestrians in order to use this crosswalk on Greenwood. I mean, there is no function in that crosswalk, and I don't see a reason why it should be improved. And also, I notice a lot of people they're running they're trying to cross Highway 9 a little bit south on a ridge crest. And there is the community is more live there. A lot of people are hiking there because it's more flat, and also people are crossing to go south towards downtown Los Gatos. So the crossing needed to be built there, not on Greenwood Road. That's my opinion. Yeah.
Good opinion. I like that.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Great.
All right, then. If we don't have any other comments, we can move on to item number 4, Dave's Avenue Neighborhood Improvement Project, Bruce Vista Poppy. Update, please.
Thank you, Chairman Lawler, the Chairperson Lawler. At the last commission meeting, there was discussion about the challenges that kids to school particularly face in the Bruce Poppy area. And there was some reference made to a project that had been discussed and defined previously. In fact, that project was designed by a civil engineer, and the design completed earlier in 2022, or I'm thinking about May of 2022. So with this report, I asked Boise to include the plans for that improvement. And if the commission can review and look at those, and with any questions, happy to discuss that. The improvements include drainage improvements like gutters on the majority of Vista and Bruce. Sidewalk enhancements on Poppy south of Bruce Avenue. And a raised crosswalk at Bruce and Poppy. Interestingly, there is not the crosswalk at Vista is not raised. That had to do with the grades of existing sidewalk and dealing with drainage and so on. But there was comment, I think, by commission members about improving the safety of those intersections and that route to school. So again, I'm happy to discuss further or look at those plans with the commission collectively or on an individual basis. I mean, they're engineering plans, so they're, you know, perhaps difficult for some to read, but the major issue here, of course, is again, funding. This project, the cost estimate for this project prepared by the design engineer was about $1.5 million. So where that money might come from is its own research project.
Mhm. I guess one comment to just add to that is I know that Safe Routes to Schools, I think her name's Wendy Riggs, had done a self-analysis or a statistical survey, so to speak, by standing at that corner a couple different times during one school week, counting the number of cars that essentially rolled through the stop sign. And I think I emailed that to you because they sent it to me at some point, Barry. And I'm not sure if we've included that in public record, but I can get that information again if we need.
I
to.
remember seeing that, Bob.
Okay.
And I think that was recently redone.
Yeah, last 3 months or 2 months, somewhere in
Right.
there. I don't remember the exact date.
Commissioner Berry?
So this project was intended to be done in conjunction with a greater a street improvement project on Bruce that included improved drainage and, you know, all sorts of work. So I would venture to guess a lot of that $1 million plus cost, if this is timed the way we intended it to be timed, is money the city has to spend anyways.
Mhm.
You can correct me if that doesn't sound right, Don.
When you say spend anyways, I'm not sure I follow.
So there's going to be that street will be repaved and a lot of work done on the edges of the street due to drainage issues. Jessica said that there was some serious drainage problems on that street that we had to address.
Well, it is correct to say that those streets, Bruce and Vista, both lack a state-of-the-art drainage facility, curb and gutter or rolled gutter. And if you're correct that the plans do call for that, not on the entirety of Vista and not on the entirety of Bruce, but the majority of those streets in the city would be provided concrete rolled gutters to convey water, and there would be a repaving involved. But that's correct to say, in addition to the improvements that I was referencing at the intersection, the crosswalk, sidewalks, and so on.
So just to be clear, our intent was that these improvements will be done at the same time as part of the same project. That was
Yes, this set of plans has all of it in one design package.
Right. To be clear, this is the big project that every year we come up with for the city to approve, correct? I mean, last year we did, what was it, Natalie and Zena. We curb and, we did gutters on those streets and repaved. So I'm assuming this is the next project, and we're tying in the safe routes to school, in the sense that we're having the raised crosswalk. I know that's been a big deal for a long time. So am I right in this is what we're going to present to council?
Well, that's a good question, and my answer is I don't know how that works. It is true that there have been neighborhood improvements in the past. The Xena, Natalie, Clara area was done, I think, a couple of years ago.
Right.
A year prior to that, the Winchester bicycle safety improvement work was done as a key project. Each year, the city council has, in my understanding, designated about $300,000 of revenue that it receives for street work to be used for pavement improvements. Now that's it's not just about pavement, but this last year, in 2022, there was a project to grind the pavements and install overlays on 4 different streets: Greenwood, Austin, Larincanada, and Alexander. I should say, it was a segment of Larincanada from Xena to Winchester, for example, and a portion of Greenwood from the highway to Greenwood Lane. That's that commitment to funding for maintenance is an ongoing one, so far as I know. So in preparing this upcoming year's budget, I would anticipate that a similar size project would be done. And I know there's significant needs there for pavement repair, repainting center lines and pavement markings and so on to make the roads safe. Days Avenues, the pavement markings and striping there are at the point of needing to be redone. So there's a variety of things that I would expect, let me call it maintenance, that would need to be done for the $300,000 of money the city receives for street maintenance. My understanding, and I don't know the history, you folks may know better than I, where the money came from for the Xena project, the Xena, Clara, Natalie project, because that was an expensive project. Around $1 million, I would expect. And I believe that certainly a large amount of that may have come from the general fund. I think the commission should be making its own recommendations for funding of street projects, maintenance, a neighborhood improvement project like this. That should be part of, I think, the commission's business starting early spring, and making that recommendation to the council as part of the budget process. I don't have experience on how that's happened. I suspect that Chairperson Lawler knows exactly how that did or can work in the future. The OBAG grant, and there is the GAP project, and there are other safety improvements along days. There's lots of places where there's a need for revenue. Where that can come from is a challenge.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Commissioner Berry.
I muted myself instead of unmuting. Well, the simple answer to your question, then this was before Don was involved, is yes. This was definitely meant to be part of the annual pavement improvement program when Bruce came up for work. And my understanding was Bruce had more problems and was going to inherently be more expensive than the other projects we had done.
All right, thank you. Yes, it's expensive, but I know based on city council's actions in the past, and yes, we earmark the funding, we find other funding sources, but the idea is to invest in our roads so that we save costs long-term by really fixing these correctly now and not doing short-term fixes, but long-term fixes. And obviously proper drainage is very important, not only for protecting the roads, but protecting property. So it'll be up to the council. But I'm sure that this obviously is a project that needs to get done. I walk my dogs in that area all the time. And so I know exactly what we're talking about, and we'll just see what happens. But yes, so they start the budget process. They're going to start having their budget meetings fairly soon. They like to have the budget wrapped up by the end of May. So.
A couple other things regarding what Don said about our involvement in the past. This commission has basically just passively approved what the city engineer recommended. We weren't proactively involved in making those decisions. But maybe going forward, that would be a good idea, as he suggested. And then one other comment, if I may, do Bob or Shalini, do either of you recall? I thought the design that we finalized had bulb outs for traffic calming. Or did we need to get rid of those for some reason? You were both around when we came up with the design.
I remember we did have bulb outs there. We did not take it out.
My understanding from Jessica, I asked her about some of this history, is that the bulb outs were deemed not feasible. And this plan is, if you look at the various sheets in it, does not have bulb outs.
Yes, I did note that. I'd just like to add that traffic calming and slowing down people going through that intersection was one of our goals, because there was a lot of neighborhood complaints about speeding on that street and not stopping at that intersection, and the kids going across that intersection unsafely.
Of course, there is a stop sign for use at Poppy,
but yeah, that wasn't sufficient.
And I'm not sure that the bulb outs cure misbehaving drivers.
Right.
But a raised crosswalk may very well do that, right?
That'll help.
Certainly.
They did plan to put those temporary that road bumps too, if I remember correctly. Jessica mentioned it, but I do not remember if we actually got to it.
We took a neighborhood vote on adding what do they call sleeping policemen? I forget the right word for it.
Right.
Speed bumps.
Right. Speed bumps.
And what happened was the neighborhood barely voted against it. It was quite a messy issue, but the people that live on that street decided they didn't want it.
Yeah.
I think you had to have a 2/3 majority, if I remember correctly. That was.
Well, if I might add, what I heard from the Safe Routes to School folks, and I think implied in what you all have said, is a big concern is vehicles versus kids at Bruce Poppy. And a raised crosswalk or speed humps is not going to stop the kind of behavior, because those are traversable at 10 to 15, maybe even 20 miles an hour, depending on your wheelbase. So people that are doing those rolling stops or not stopping or whatever, I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, but in fact, they're not going to stop that behavior. Of course, the majority of that behavior is during kid commute hours, and the people that are violating it are parents taking their kids to school. So the only thing I think that starts to get to absolute you will stop is a crossing guard.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have attempted to start conversations with Safe Routes to School, and there's a new, I think I mentioned last time, there's a new police officer who is the liaison for that program. And to find out what is the situation with respect to crossing guards, because that's, I think, the only true remedy to the misbehavior that's been described.
That's a really good point. A quick question. So if it's feasible and we can get across, if the school district or better, safer routes to school, we can get that, then we would save the costs of putting in that elevated crosswalk, would we not? I mean, what's this? Is that a significant cost savings?
Well, if the council successfully finds funding for this project, it's ready to go. I'm not sure that taking out the raised crosswalk does much to reduce the cost, because as has been previously stated, this plan calls for new gutters up and down Bruce and Vista, sidewalk extension up to the El Sombroso Oaks retirement community, redoing the corner. So I think that raised crosswalk is a relatively minor piece of the total cost of this project.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other, any questions, comments?
I have a couple more comments, if I may. One regarding crossing guard. We have talked in the past because some community members came in and were distressed that there weren't consistent crossing guards on Dave's. So whatever organization funds those and manages them weren't able to even, keep guards there consistently. That was my understanding. So adding another one is probably going to be quite a challenge.
Okay.
And then my other comment was, I believe, Liz, you know Doreen Nelson.
Yes.
She did more heavy lifting on this than anybody. I would encourage you to have a coffee with her and get her perspective on this, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. I will, for sure. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Let's see, going back to, I guess I should open it up. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
None.
And seeing none, I will return it back to the commission. Any other comments? Otherwise, we will move on to commission reports. Oh, Commissioner Barry, do you still have a question or comment? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Wimberly, for your reports. Moving on to commission reports. Does anybody have anything they'd like to report?
I do. Just 1 second. Let me bring it up.
Sure.
So for the new council members, I represent Monte Sereno on the VTA, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And we had a meeting last night. Probably the most interesting thing for us that was discussed there is a Winchester Station transit-oriented development plan that they're working on. So the light rail stop closest to us on Winchester, they plan on putting housing there and doing some significant development. So if anybody has any interest in what's going on or wants to comment on it, there's going to be a public meeting via Zoom on February 16th, and I can send you the Zoom link if you want to attend that. I also attended this month's Los Gatos Complete Streets and Transportation Committee meeting as an observer. I just thought I'd mention a couple highlights from there. Their 2023 priorities are the following: bike valet for special events, to encourage biking to special events. Public transportation, they're going to try to improve or motivate people to use public transportation. Safety on mountain roads, which they're not sure yet how they're going to address that, but that's something they want to address. General community outreach and public meetings, and then traffic calming, just figuring out ways to get traffic to go slower throughout the town of Los Gatos. There was a police report during the meeting, and they announced that there were 6 injury collisions since late December in Los Gatos and Monte Sereno. 3 of them involved pedestrians. 1 involved bicycle and one involved a skateboard. And I've mentioned in the past that they are working on a paid parking plan for the downtown lots. The only report they had on it was they called out, they had a bid out for proposals for an app, so people could pay for parking with an app, and they didn't get any. I don't remember whether they didn't get any responses or they didn't get any reasonable responses. So they're sending that out for rebid, but sooner or later there will be able to pay with an app. That's everything I have.
All right, thank you. Hey, if I could ask you a quick question on that, were they talking about the second phase of the Winchester project as well at that meeting?
That was not talked about at all. The Complete Streets project, I mean, I would venture to guess that's years out.
Okay.
That definitely was not discussed at the meeting.
All right.
And it's not, I don't see it being on the agenda in the near future. They're really focused on two bridges. The one parallel to the Blossom Hill Bridge, and the one to give access from Highway 9 to the Los Gatos Creek Trail. Neither of those were discussed at this project, but those are the two big public works type projects they're working on related to bicycle and pedestrian.
All right. All right. Thank you. Any other commissioners? Anybody else have anything to report at this time? All right. Moving on to our staff report. Mr. Wimberly, do you have a staff report for us, or are we?
I think
Are we good?
My best of both.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on to future agenda items. Does any commissioner have an item they'd like to see on the agenda? All right, I'd like to add something. One of the impetus for why I wanted to join the Better Streets Commission at the very beginning was when we first moved here 10 years ago. We had teenagers knock on our door, and they were getting a petition signed to have a crosswalk put across Winchester at Vineland, where the one bus stop is. And obviously, at that time, Winchester was 4 lanes. Obviously, it didn't happen, but when the Complete Streets project on Winchester was going on, and there was public comment back in 2020, I brought it up with them about when are they going to put a crosswalk across Winchester, because there's no place to cross Winchester other than it at Dave's. Even if you go all the way down to Lark, there really isn't. There's like a crosswalk down there, but you have to cross Lark to cross the street. So they said it would be part of phase 2, and that's why I asked you the question. So clearly that's a long way out. I'd like to see if there's any way that we can facilitate something, because I see people crossing that all the time. I've seen a gal pushing her husband in a wheelchair, rushing across the street. And I think given that students take the bus to and from Los Gatos High School there, and that is the one stop that we have, I think it would behoove us to have at least a crosswalk to make it safer for people to cross the street. I'd like to see if we can kind of see what our options are. Other than that, anybody else? Otherwise,
will Dave's and Highway 9 be back on the agenda? I mean, excuse me, by Dave's, I mean, sure. Bruce. I mean, I don't feel fulfilled on those. I don't know what's going to happen short term. I guess with respect to Highway 9, when things change, you can let us know.
Yes, both of those would continue.
Yeah.
As far as my recommendation as unfinished business.
Okay.
All right. All right then. Well, it was lovely seeing everyone tonight. Thank you so much.
Oh wait, Natalia has a comment.
Oh yes, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was waiting and then I forgot.
Sure.
I had a question for you. What are approximate budget to put the crosswalk, the one that you're talking about?
That is a good question. I think Dawn, would you be able to give us kind of an idea? I mean, even if the city itself would paint it, we would have to work with Los Gatos, because I think the other side is Los Gatos.
Yes. And unprotected crosswalks have their own challenge. So my suspicion is, in working with Los Gatos, there would need to be an engineering review of that and how to do it.
Okay.
The need for warning lights and so on would conceivably be part of that study, because, you know, as I was told, explained to me by Chairman Commissioner Chafin, the pedestrian crossing across Highway 9 at LaSalle is a second generation effort, because the first attempt at that was not deemed successful. And I think, did you say, Commissioner, that there was a fatality at that crosswalk even after the improved version was installed? So crosswalks are important, but a mixed blessing and need to be done carefully is my only comment. And you're right, we would have to work with Los Gatos.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you. Did I answer the question?
So it's not like only a budget issue, it's also like how to plan it and how to make it right, and permits, right?
Yes, and whether it has to tie in with the ultimate improvement of Winchester, there's a number of sort of strategic questions that would have to be addressed, but not to say that improving pedestrian safety at that intersection is not a very important topic, because there is really only one other place.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you. Well then, everyone, thank you. I think we can now, the meeting of the Better Streets Commission for February 9th is now adjourned.
Did the commission wish to establish a date, time, special meeting on the master plan? I'm just looking at my notes. I either missed that or.
I don't think anything was set. I don't think anything was set in regards to that, but if you wish, I can help you with sending out an email and maybe getting a couple of dates to see how people feel about, you know, being available those days.
That would
I'll
be
just throw out a suggestion of the second Thursday, which is when we have our meeting, because that follows the VTA meeting. So I'm forced to be in town. That's a little bit selfish, but as a starting point, we could look at that.
So you're talking second Thursday in March?
Yeah, if we have a special meeting in March, would be my first recommendation.
Well, if you'd like, we can go ahead and set that date for right now. And then if we'll send it an email and get a confirmation on everybody's availability. Should we not have everybody on board, then we'll send it out another date. Does that sound okay for everybody?
sounds great.
Yes, it sounds okay. So far that day works for me as well. Mhm.
And the target would be to have written questions provided before that or by that date.
Yes,
Mhm.
so that we can go over everything. Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Right.